repeatedly nominated for a gay award at work. Alright, buckle up, because what started as a small misunderstanding about my sexual orientation turned into one of the most bizarre and surreal experiences of my professional life. A comedy of errors, if you will. But at the time, it was a nightmare that I'm still processing, and I think you'll see why. Let's go back to the beginning. I live in New York, the land of bagels, skyscrapers, and people who believe that using a turn signal is a sign of weakness. I work at a company that prides itself on being progressive, inclusive, and, apparently, deeply invested in my love life. Now, before this saga unfolded, I would have said my job was pretty normal. I clocked in, got my work done, and tried to avoid getting caught stealing office pens like every other respectable human. I'm a woman in a male-dominated industry, and I've worked hard to build a solid reputation. Apparently, though, my love for flannel and Home Depot set off some serious alarm bells in my boss's head. One fine Monday morning, I'm sitting at my desk, probably sipping on a too-strong cup of coffee and mentally preparing for the workweek, when bam! An email from my boss hits my inbox. The subject? Congratulations on your LGBTQ plus professional nomination. Wait. What? My eyes scanned the message like I was decoding the Da Vinci Code. You've been nominated for an outstanding achievement in LGBTQ plus business leadership, blah blah blah. And then I see it. The public announcement of my clearly misunderstood sexuality. Did I accidentally come out to my entire company? Did I miss a memo? I mean, I wasn't even flattered. I was confused. Like, I appreciate the thought, but I'm not gay. I didn't even know how to process the fact that someone, somewhere, assumed I was and then nominated me for a prestigious award based on that assumption. I could almost see my boss grinning as they hit send, thinking, this is my good deed for the day. Except, no. It was not. This was like nominating a goldfish for an Olympic swimming event. After my initial bout of shock, I figured it was a simple misunderstanding. I pulled my boss aside and casually explained, hey, just so you know, I'm not gay. I really appreciate the nomination, but that's not exactly me. I even laughed it off, thinking that would be the end of it. My boss, a self-proclaimed ally of all allies, nodded, smiled, and said something like, oh, my mistake. No worries. And I walked away thinking it was handled. Handled. Famous last words. Fast forward a month. I'm sitting in a meeting, minding my own business, probably thinking about lunch because, let's be real, that's what we all do during meetings. Suddenly, my phone buzzes. Another email. Subject? Congratulations on your second LGBTQ plus nomination. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I could tell you I stayed calm. I wish I could tell you I took a deep breath and let it roll off my back like a duck in a rainstorm. But, alas, my reaction was more like a malfunctioning robot. I stood up so fast I knocked over my coffee, gave a half-hearted excuse about needing air, and bolted out of the room like someone had just set my chair on fire. I marched right into my boss's office, clutching my phone with the offending email still open, and blurted out, what part of I'm not gay didn't you understand? My boss blinked at me, clearly caught off guard, and then, get this, they gave me that knowing smile, like I was harboring some deep, hidden truth. You're overthinking it, they said, waving a hand dismissively. It's just an award. No big deal. No big deal. Publicly outing someone who isn't even part of the community they're being outed to is no big deal? And that's when it hit me. My boss genuinely thought they were helping me come out. Like some kind of weird fairy godparent of diversity. Poof. You're gay now. You've always been gay. I'm here to make sure everyone knows. Cue internal screaming. At this point, I was torn between laughing and screaming into the void. My boss thought they were doing me a favor, while I was trying to figure out how to avoid the rainbow-colored spotlight that was now shining directly on my not-gay self. I tried to explain, yet again, that while I respect and support the LGBTQ+ community, I am not a member of it. But every time I tried, they just gave me that damn wink, like I was in on some kind of conspiracy theory involving Home Depot, flannel shirts, and bisexual lighting. By the third nomination, I was practically an honorary member of the community, without even being part of it. It was like I had been inducted into a club where the only membership requirement was being assumed gay by your boss. I half expected my company to throw a coming-out party for me with rainbow cupcakes and a banner that said, "Welcome to the family, whether you like it or not." Frustrated, I turned to the internet. Reddit, specifically. Because when you're being involuntarily nominated for LGBTQ+ awards despite not being gay, Reddit is where you go. The advice I got was solid, if not a little snarky. "Dude, just tell them it's sex-based harassment," someone said. "Use the legal buzzwords. They'll back off real quick." Another user added, "Honestly, your boss probably thinks they're being progressive. Time to nip that in the bud." So, armed with my newfound legal knowledge, I drafted an email that was more professional than I felt. "I'd like to reiterate that I am not comfortable with these nominations and, as previously discussed, I am not a member of the LGBTQ+ community. Continuing to nominate me against my wishes constitutes sex-based harassment. Please cease and desist." Boom. Sent. The next day, my boss called me into their office, looking sheepish. "I had no idea it was making you this uncomfortable," they said, as if the 3 times I told them wasn't enough of a clue. "I just thought it was, a fun way to celebrate diversity, by assuming I'm gay." "Well, you do wear a lot of flannel." "Really? We're still on the flannel?" I couldn't help it. I laughed. It was either that or throw myself out the nearest window. After that awkward conversation, things started to cool down. My boss promised no more nominations, though they still gave me those weird, conspiratorial winks every now and then. "We'll make sure this never happens again," my boss said, looking like they'd just survived the most uncomfortable conversation of their life. As a final cherry on top, I contacted the organization hosting the awards. I wanted to let them know that maybe, just maybe, they should double-check that nominees are, actually part of the LGBTQ+ community before announcing it to the world. Their response? A curt, "Thank you for your feedback. We will take it under consideration." And so, my journey as the unwitting face of a community I wasn't part of came to an end. I'm still at the same company, still wearing flannel, still hauling lumber from Home Depot on the weekends. But now, I do it knowing that somewhere, deep down, my boss probably still thinks I'm in denial. Moral of the story? Flannel isn't a sexuality. But it is, apparently, enough to get you nominated for an LGBTQ+ award. So if you ever find yourself in my shoes, or flannel, remember, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, rainbow-colored nomination emails, and an unhealthy amount of Home Depot trips. So there I was, with my boss finally promising to stop nominating me for LGBTQ+ awards, though it felt more like a reluctant truce than a real resolution. The dust was settling, but deep down I had this nagging feeling that this was not the end of the Flannelgate saga. I mean, when your boss is dead set on being the most woke person in the room, you can't exactly rule out future nominations for most progressive lumberjack. Now, you'd think the story would end there, right? The boss apologizes, the awards stop, and we all live happily ever after. But no. This is corporate America, people. Things never just end. They linger like that awkward half-wave you give someone you think is waving at you, only to realize they were waving at the person behind you. There's always some bizarre twist lurking around the corner. In the weeks following that final conversation, my boss was practically walking on eggshells around me. Every interaction felt like they were trying not to accidentally nominate me for something again, like I might spontaneously combust into glitter and pride flags at any moment. It was weird, but also kind of hilarious. The funniest part? My coworkers. They had no idea why I'd suddenly become the office's rainbow-tinted elephant in the room. There were whispers, sideways glances, and what I could only describe as a flannel-fueled rumor mill. One day, I walked into the break room to hear two of my colleagues mid-conversation. "Did you hear about the award thing?" "Oh yeah. I think she's secretly, in the closet, but her boss blew her cover." "Really?" "I thought it was just a phase because of Home Depot." "Home Depot again?" Apparently, the universal sign of closeted queerness is a deep love for discount plywood and power tools. Who knew? At this point, the situation had become like a strange workplace sitcom, and I was the unwitting star. My coworkers weren't sure how to treat me anymore. Do they congratulate me? Apologize for not knowing sooner? It was like I had become the unofficial mascot of workplace ambiguity. One guy, bless his heart, tried to be supportive by recommending a lesbian bar in Brooklyn, just in case I wanted a safe space. I didn't even have the heart to correct him. I just smiled and said, "Thanks, I'll keep that in mind." And then there was the office potluck. The theme? Pride. That's right. My boss, in a stunning display of irony, decided that our next company-wide event should be a pride celebration, complete with rainbow cupcakes, LGBTQ+ trivia, and, of course, an allyship award. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. By now, I had developed a sort of gallows humor about the whole situation. When the invite hit my inbox, I stared at it for a solid 5 minutes, wondering if this was some kind of cosmic prank. Did the universe just love watching me squirm? Or was my boss really that oblivious to the irony? Still, I wasn't going to miss the event. I'm nothing if not a glutton for punishment. Plus, the thought of watching my coworkers awkwardly navigate a rainbow-filled room while eyeing me like I was the grand marshal of this bizarre parade was too good to pass up. So I grabbed my most stereotypically straight outfit, just to throw them off, and showed up. When I walked into the room, I could feel the tension. People were waiting for me to make some grand entrance, maybe waving a pride flag or announcing my newfound membership in the LGBTQ+ community. But nope. I just grabbed a rainbow cupcake and found a seat, quietly watching the madness unfold around me. There was a trivia game about famous LGBTQ+ figures, and at one point, someone looked to me for an answer like I was their personal Wikipedia of gay culture. I just shrugged. I'm not sure, guys. I guess I'll have to Google it like the rest of you. And then, the moment of truth, the allyship award. My boss, clearly still unsure how to approach me after the whole nomination debacle, stood at the front of the room, grinning like they'd just solved world peace. "And now, it's time for a special recognition," they began, holding up a small plaque engraved with what I can only assume was some generic corporate nonsense about diversity and inclusion. "This award goes to someone who has shown unwavering support for the LGBTQ+ community." I held my breath. Oh no. Please no. And while we've had our mix-ups in the past, oh my God, they're going to do it. They're actually going to do it. I'd like to recognize our very own, cue internal screaming, Stacy, for her tireless efforts in supporting our inclusion initiatives. I nearly choked on my cupcake. They hadn't picked me. Sweet, sweet relief washed over me like a tidal wave. I watched as Stacy, who had probably never been more confused in her life, awkwardly accepted the award while glancing around like, "Wait, did I do something?" And just like that, the weirdest chapter of my professional life started to close. The event ended, the award was given to someone else, thank God, and slowly, the whispers about my supposed closet-dwelling tendencies began to fade away. My boss, still ever the ally, eventually moved on to other misguided initiatives, and I resumed my life as a flannel-wearing, Home Depot loving, not gay woman in peace. But to this day, whenever I walk into a room and someone gives me that knowing wink, I wonder, do they still think I'm secretly gay? Or is it just my outfit? Either way, I've learned one thing: flannel may be cozy, but it comes with a whole lot more assumptions than I ever bargained for. I'd go back to my regular routine. My boss would stop eyeing me like I was the star of some Queer Eye reboot they were trying to cast, and life would resume its semi-normal state. But no, oh no, corporate life always finds a way to keep things weird, and boy did it ever. A few weeks after the Pride potluck incident, I found myself at my desk, typing away like the diligent worker bee I was, when I heard the unmistakable sound of my boss's voice floating across the office. You know how, when you work with someone long enough, you can identify their voice from a mile away? It was like that, except this time, I heard something that made my heart sink. They were talking to HR. Now, most people's interactions with HR are mundane, boring even. But in my case, I had a gut feeling that whatever they were cooking up was going to be the corporate equivalent of a sitcom plot gone wrong. My paranoia wasn't unfounded. A few hours later, I got an email from HR titled, "Let's Chat, Professional Growth Opportunities." Oh no, I muttered to myself. I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation about promotions or raises. No, this had "Weird New Diversity Initiative" written all over it. Reluctantly, I scheduled the meeting. Sure enough, the next day, I found myself sitting across from HR, where they gleefully informed me that they were rolling out a new, inclusive mentorship program, and guess who they wanted to lead it? That's right, HR beamed, as if bestowing upon me the greatest honor since sliced bread. "We think you'd be perfect to mentor our new hires about inclusion in the workplace." I blinked. Inclusion? But I mean, I'm not. Exactly. HR interrupted, mistaking my confusion for enthusiasm. "You're such a great example of how we can break stereotypes and bridge gaps in the workplace." I was starting to wonder if they were confusing me with someone else. Did they think I was a champion for the LGBTQ+ community because I wore flannel and owned a drill? Was there a secret spreadsheet somewhere that listed employees' assumed sexualities based on their love of power tools? HR continued, "We think you'd be a great role model, especially for our new hires who might be struggling to find their place here. You've navigated this space so gracefully." Gracefully? Navigated what? Was this a reference to the flannel-wearing, Home Depot visiting stereotype they'd all assumed was my lived reality? I stared at HR, my mind racing for an appropriate response. Finally, I said, "Look, I appreciate the thought, but I'm really not sure I'm the right fit for this. I don't think my experience is what you think it is." HR tilted their head, looking at me as if I'd just told them the sky was purple. "But you've been such a visible presence during our Pride events." I sighed. "I'm not sure if you're aware, but I've been nominated for a lot of awards I'm not exactly qualified for, and it's caused some confusion." I'm not gay." HR blinked, clearly taken aback, but then quickly recovered. "Oh, well, we don't want to pigeonhole anyone based on labels. It's more about your allyship, you know? Your support and advocacy." Support? Advocacy? The only thing I'd supported lately was the notion that people should stop assuming things about my personal life based on my lumberjack aesthetic. But I wasn't about to start a new HR scandal by saying that out loud. In the end, I managed to escape the mentorship program with some vague promise of thinking about it. But as I left the HR office, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Somehow, through a series of misunderstandings and assumptions, I had become the unofficial face of diversity and inclusion, purely by virtue of my wardrobe and fondness for weekend DIY projects. As the weeks passed, the whispers around the office finally began to die down, and I thought the whole saga was behind me. But of course, life has a funny way of keeping things interesting. One afternoon, as I was grabbing coffee from the break room, I overheard two coworkers talking. "Did you hear?" one of them whispered. "She's been asked to lead some big mentorship program." "No way," the other replied. "That makes so much sense. She's, like, the poster child for inclusion here." I nearly choked on my coffee. Poster child? For inclusion? At this point, it felt like I was living in some kind of bizarre alternate universe where flannel was the new pride flag and Home Depot was the queerest place on earth. But you know what? Maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. After all, if my love of discount lumber could help make the office a more inclusive place, even by accident, then maybe I could roll with it. Sure, I wasn't the LGBTQ+ icon they thought I was, but if my coworkers felt a little more comfortable being themselves because of my unintentional activism, maybe that was a win. So, I embraced my new unofficial title as the office's ambassador of inclusion, as they half-jokingly called me, and whenever someone asked me for advice on how to navigate the workplace, I'd offer them the best piece of wisdom I had. Just wear flannel, hit up Home Depot on the weekends, and never take life too seriously. You'll fit right in. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment and follow for more stories.